So our guest on Mental Health Radio, Take It From Us today, is an ambassador for open and honest conversations about mental health, and especially her own mental health. It's fair to say that guest Laura Eustace has been through the ringer mentally, despite her young age. Yet she's got the courage to speak out about her challenges, has worked for the Black Dog Institute in Australia as a corporate presenter, and is adamant that being authentic and keeping it real is the only way to address the silence that often immerses mental health. Laura writes a regular blog about her emotions and challenges, yet is quick to say that she doesn't use social media as a way to vent her feelings. So here's Laura on Take It From Us. Welcome, Laura, to you. You're very brave to come into the studio for the radio studio for the first time.
Oh, thank you, Sheldon. Well, thank you for that introduction. And yeah, this is really exciting, very new for me.
Met Laura in a cafe in Manukau Road about a fortnight ago and was immediately impressed with her candour and honesty. Are they two values important to you, Laura?
Definitely, yeah. It's taken a wee while to get here, but being open and talking about what's going on, especially when it comes to mental health, it's become somewhat imperative for me and for my well-being. So being open and being able to share my experiences, I've found has helped me so much. So they're really important values to me now, yes.
So some of those experiences that have impacted your mental health, how much do you want to talk about those?
As I say, I'm very open with what I've gone through. What you heard in Manukau, I'm more than happy to talk about now. So when I was younger, I was diagnosed with depression when I was 16. I was raped when I was 17 and attempted to take my life twice following that. And since then, it's been a constant roller coaster of emotions, I guess you could say. Getting better and then finding ways to help that. And then, another thing in life happens. Unfortunately, one of my best friends passed away coming up to 2 years ago. It happened very suddenly. We're still unsure of the cause of death, so that's always been something that's been really hard to deal with. And following her death, I found it really, really hard. I was one of the first responders on the scene, so that has kicked off my PTSD that I've been dealing with since then. And again, since then, I've attempted to take my life 3 times, and I'm still here to tell the tale. And I am on the best upwards I've ever been on, and I'm really proud to say I'm still here after everything I've kind of gone through, and I'm just here to talk about my experiences and help people that may be struggling through the same things that I've gone through or can relate on some sort of level. So, yeah.
What would you rate as being the most serious sort of trauma that has impacted your mental health?
I think they've all impacted me in different ways. Obviously, the sexual assault, that was the main thing where I didn't talk about it for a very long time. I couldn't admit it to friends, family, not even myself, for at least a year and a half, where I feel like with the other traumas I went through, I was a lot more willing to talk about it. But for that one, that was one of the first traumas I really went through, and it was definitely the hardest to open up about. And it was only until one of my dear friends, she actually went through a similar experience, and she opened up to me about it, and that gave me the confidence to talk about it as well. So showing that someone else can talk about it, and it led me to opening up about it, that's what kind of kick-started me wanting to share my stories. And as life went on and as different experiences came up, different traumas as well, I've just really wanted to talk about it because no one talks about it. And I found that was the thing that really impacted me the most, was I was struggling with all these emotions and not talking about it, and it just built up, and I think that's what led to my first initial suicide attempts, because it all pented up and I just couldn't handle it. I couldn't deal with what was going on in my head, and I just couldn't find a way to express it in a safe or open manner.
So were the people, supporters, family, good friends that you've learnt you can talk to and trust?
Yes. I am really, really lucky where I now have a really great support system. It's taken quite a while to navigate the different ways. I definitely opened up to my friends a lot first, which I know was quite a struggle for my family, not understanding what was kind of going on, but I opened up to my friends first, and I slowly got to the point where I was feeling able to talk to my family about it. I think when you open up to your family about it, it kind of made me feel like it was a lot more real. And I think also they weren't too sure about the extent of things, again, because I hadn't talked about it. And it's really opened up the lines of communication now. And so whenever something is going on, I feel like I can talk to them. Like after my best friend passed away, I spoke to my dad a lot. He had gone through a similar experience where his best friend passed away suddenly, and I felt I could relate to it, and all the things he was saying, it was kind of like, yes, I finally have found someone that actually understands what I'm going through. And I think that was a really good connector for me and my dad in particular. And my mum was constantly there throughout all my attempts and all the help that I needed. She was constantly pushing for support, and same with my sister. So I'm so lucky to have such a great support system.
Can I just jump in quickly? I was just going to say, I think a lot of it too is the fear of how your friends and family are going to react, that the risk of them perhaps pushing you aside. And once you've got that trust and that sort of thing, that's a huge thing, I think.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I mean, I've had some friends who did turn away when I told them about a second sexual assault I went through. They denied it, and they're not my friends anymore. For that reason, just because they were unwilling to kind of understand where I was coming from, and they were making such comments that were, again, detrimental to my own mental health. And it was kind of, you know, when you start to realise that there are toxic tendencies in other people that are surrounding you and you're trying to get better, if they're constantly pulling you down, you need to be like, okay, well, if you're not helping my mental health right now, or have at all, why are you my friend? What am I getting from this friendship? If you're constantly making me upset, if you're constantly adding to this, I wouldn't say mental burden, but like the mental breakdown that's kind of going on in my head.
Yeah.
Why should I put up with that? And it's clearly not a good friendship if you're feeling like you can put me down. So
yeah, it's like a guilt thing, isn't it? Having to justify why you feel how you feel, when really you just need them to stop and listen and be supportive.
Well, you've got to do things that are going to help your own mental health. I mean, losing friends really does suck, but at the same time, I'm lucky that I've got other good friends that are going to support me, and I think that's the most important thing for me.
There's a little saying that I have: when you look at it, a friendship really is a relationship without the intimacy. And I always say, if somebody comes into your life and they're not going to enhance it and you're not happier as a result, then you really seriously have to stop and say, what the heck is this person here for anyway? Particularly if they're bringing you down all the time. You're trying to go up and it's like someone pulling the rug out from under you all the time.
Yeah.
You can only deal with that, I think, so long, can't you?
Well, in our wellness workshop that we're currently running, the RAP class, we are emphasising, or I'm emphasising as a facilitator, to be around positive people and people that you enjoy, and I guess that's really important. But then there's always that proviso that it's nice to support people with a mental health issue, and they aren't always positive. So it's a bit of a catch-22 in some ways.
Oh, for sure. But I think also being able to acknowledge when maybe you're being a toxic person as well. If you've got your own toxic tendencies. I mean, I went through a phase where I know I probably wasn't the best friend to quite a few of my friends, but a lot of them knew that I was going through a really rough time and they stuck by it. And I think those are the friends that you really want to cling on to, but also being able to acknowledge, okay, I'm being a really crap friend. What can I do to do better now?
Isn't that a big test, though, of friendship? Is when you go through that mental health diagnosis or anything major in your life, the true friends are there for you, not just for the woo-woo party times, but they're the ones that you know are true friends because they're there for you through thick and thin.
Yeah, for sure.
We do have an obligation, though, I think, Laura, to try and move forward out of our black hole, our black dog. People like to see that we are putting some effort in. We're being personally responsible for our recovery, or at least trying to take baby steps. Is that the way that you have worked towards recovery, by taking baby steps?
Yeah, I mean, recovery doesn't happen overnight, and I think I've always been quite an impatient person. I like to get things done, but my recovery journey, I mean, it's been over 6 or 7 years now that I've had my depression, and I can tell you it's a long road. It's a marathon, and you know, by taking those small steps and figuring out ways that work for you, I mean, it's not like a one-size-fits-all kind of recovery plan. You really do have to find the things that really work for you and emphasize on those and make sure that you are doing them to your best ability. And, you know, when you're going through a crap day, what works for you? What can you do to kind of help yourself get through that day? Even if it's just surviving that one day. Right. What can I do to just really get through it? Okay, if I need to sit down and watch YouTube videos that are going to make me laugh, okay, cool. If I need to go and take my dog for a walk outside, just to get outside, awesome. If I need to just go have a shower, change my bed sheets.
Take the pressure down.
You're with Take It From Us on 104.6 Planet FM.
You've had a bit of exposure to the mental health system, maybe starting, in Australia when you lived over there, or before that?
No, so over here, when I initially attempted twice, I was in Auckland Hospital and then referred to the Curry Clinic, which is in Green Lane, and I was in the mental health system there for, I think, about a year. I was seeing a psychiatrist as well as a psychologist, and as I say, I was with them for about a year, and then my next exposure, I guess, was to the Australian mental health system. But I wasn't with them for too long because I obviously came back to New Zealand following what I would deem my worst suicide attempt, and Mum just wanted me back home, obviously, so that she could check that I was safe. And then I was put into the mental health system over here. And
I gather that the result of being put into the mental health system here wasn't staggeringly great.
Unfortunately not. So because my suicide attempt had taken place over in Sydney, I was in a Sydney hospital for about a week in the psychiatric ward, and then I was only discharged because I was coming back to New Zealand. So my mum had guaranteed to them that she'll make sure that, you know, I get the help that I need back over here and whatnot. So I was allowed to be discharged, and I came back over here, and my parents worked tirelessly to get me into the mental health system. I was seen by, I guess, the crisis team about a week in from when I first arrived. They did an assessment and they said that I wasn't an urgent case, so I was then put onto a 6-month wait list to see a psychologist. So that was quite disheartening.
How long did it take to get to see that psychologist? 6 months?
Well, that was when I got the phone call, but my parents decided, because they were so unsure of what to do and because I was quite a wreck, as you can imagine, they were calling up as many psychologist clinics as they could, just trying to get me into anything until I could see someone. And the first clinic that my mum called, I was referred to a psychologist, and ever since then I've been with that same psychologist. So my parents were willing to pay the amount of money that it costs for a private psychologist, which is quite a lot. And then it was only until I started seeing her that I found out that I was eligible for the ACC to cover my psychologist sessions due to my past sexual assaults.
Right.
So, yeah, I was very grateful for the fact that my parents were willing to put in that money, and luckily I've been able to get into the ACC system, and I have been part of it for about a year and a half now.
Were they able to go back and say, okay, you shouldn't have needed to pay this privately and refunded what you'd already paid, or was it just basically from that point onwards that ACC picked it up?
So it was the first session. Okay. When I explained what had happened, my psychologist was like, oh, well, why are you paying? Gotcha. You are eligible. And I was like, what are you talking about? I had no idea about this. And so
ACC backdated that?
Yeah.
Yeah, good. That's what I was wondering. Yeah.
So how did you feel about being sort of admitted into the mental health system in a sort of rather superficial way, being told that you weren't serious enough to be seen immediately, to get care immediately, and to have to wait 6 months?
It was definitely disappointing. I was feeling a lot of emotions at that time. There was a lot of anger. There was a lot of helplessness. I didn't know what else I needed to do to get that help. I wasn't sure what could be deemed more serious than a suicide attempt. But I will admit, I wasn't forgotten about. I got put into a place called Manaki House, which is part of the DHB, and they did have some support workers calling up once a week, and I went in and I saw them once a week. But they weren't psychologists or anything like that. It wasn't like full-on help. It was more just checking to make sure that you're still part of the system and that to get that underway to see the psychologist in about 6 months' time. Yeah.
Right. So Manaki House is a community mental health centre. I think it's based in Panmure. There's a friend of mine who is a client there. It's not residential, it's just community support or peer support on probably a once-a-week basis, maybe an hour or 2 hours. But you'd had a suicide attempt recently before that, and you would think that surely there would be some wraparound service that would look after your safety.
Yeah, I was very scared, to be honest. It's a funny feeling scared to be in your own body, scared of your own mind, because obviously I'd seen what, leaving it undone could do, and being in a position where, I had done 4 suicide attempts. What am I meant to do? They could see in the past system. Help. Yeah, what more could I do? I mean, I've got a past of trauma. They'd heard everything that had gone on. They'd gotten the records from Australia. I mean, what more could I do? It was just a very frustrating time, I guess. And I think, having that wait list, it was quite, demoralising in a way. But at the same time, seeing how many people do go through the mental health system and how packed up it is a struggle.
You're with Take It From Us on 104.6 Planet FM.
And I'm host Sheldon Brown with Declan Curran, our producer here. He's very chatty today and very perky, so that's always good. We are talking to our guest, Laura Eustace, who has just mentioned, I'd say, a huge number of courageous things that she has done to support her mental health, and one of those was a full-time job. Another was a 5-week trip to Europe. What else was on that list, Laura?
Getting my exercise sorted out with a personal trainer.
Oh, that's right, yes.
And also getting my little dog, Eugene.
Yes.
He has been the best thing for my mental health, for sure. I never really knew how good dogs could be for your mental health, but they get you out of the house, they get you walking, and also he's just so darn cute to look at. So.
And they listen without judgment.
Right. Eugene Eustace.
Yes.
It's a bit of a mouthful, Eugene Eustace, yeah. So having a pet has been very good for your mental health.
Yes. Well, a dog in particular. I mean,
right.
I've got 2 cats at home, but they tend to ignore me, so it's nice to actually have a pet that wants to see me.
Yeah. Well, we're talking today to guest Laura Eustace about, well, she's just started talking about her Flourish project. We probably need to wind this back a little bit for a little bit of background, Laura, about the Flourish project. Is it essentially just a blog or...?
So it started off as a blog. It was my way of coming to terms of how to process all my different traumas. So I used to write about my experiences, and it was also a way for me to explain to my friends and family what I was kind of going through in my head after I'd had time to reflect and kind of accept what had gone on. And now it's turned into a social media platform on Instagram, where I share thoughts on there as well as different tips, quotes, and also other people's stories as well. But ultimately it's to become a website that includes not only my blog but also the stories of other people, of people that are flourishing, and their stories of recovery as well, and just sharing their tips as well, because again, sharing stories is so important to, for other people to be able to relate to it. But it's essentially to start the conversation around the kind of taboo subjects that surround us. So, mental health, suicide, sexual assault, grief, things like that.